Have you ever looked up at a massive, gleaming skyscraper and just wondered, how on earth did they build that? Not the engineering, I mean the money. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the financial blueprint that makes these incredible projects possible.
I mean, really think about it for a second. You're talking about a project that's going to take years to complete and cost hundreds of millions, sometimes even billions of dollars. It's a huge gamble. One wrong move, one bad assumption, and the whole thing could be a financial disaster. So, where do you even start? How do you decide to take that leap?
All right, here's our roadmap for figuring that out. We're going to start with that billion-dollar question that every developer faces. Then, we'll dive into the financial blueprint they use to answer it. We'll look at the simple stuff, money in, money out, and the not-so-simple stuff, like predicting the future. And maybe most importantly, we'll see how they stress test the whole plan before they even break ground.
So yeah, this is the heart of the problem, right? You're about to spend an unbelievable amount of money today, all based on a guess about what the world, what the market will look like several years from now. How in the world do you make a bet that big with any kind of confidence? Well, the answer is you create an incredibly detailed financial blueprint. And in the world of real estate, this essential tool has a name, the pro forma. You can think of it as the master plan, the one document that tries to bring some order and predictability to what is, by nature, a pretty chaotic process.
So what exactly is it? A development pro forma is basically a super-powered spreadsheet. It's a financial model that tells the entire story of the project's financial life, from the very first dollar spent to the day it's fully leased up and making money. This is the document you use to figure out if a project even makes sense and, to convince a bank to lend you a few $100 million.
At its core, the pro forma splits the entire budget into two main buckets. You can see here, about 70% are what we call hard costs. That's the stuff you can touch, the steel, the glass, the concrete. The other 30%, those are soft costs, and that's, well, pretty much everything else. Architect fees, legal bills, permits, and a really big one we'll get back to, the interest you're paying on that massive construction loan.
Okay, so that brings us to the real mechanics of the plan. It all comes down to a really basic question. Where's all this money coming from, and where exactly is it all going?
And here you can see the two sides of that ledger. On the right, you've got the uses. That's everything you're spending money on, from buying the land to pouring the concrete. On the left, you've got the sources, where that cash comes from. It's pretty much always a mix of the developer's own money, we call that developer equity, cash from investors or partner equity, and of course a giant construction loan, which is debt from a bank.
But here's the magic. A pro forma isn't just a fancy way to track expenses. Its real power is in acting like a financial crystal ball. It has to project years into the future to answer the one question that really matters. Is this thing actually going to make any money? You see, the pro forma has to map out this entire journey, and it can take a long time. First, you have pre-development. That's all the design work and getting permits. Then you've got the construction phase, which can take years. After that, you hit the really crucial lease-up period where you have to find tenants. Only after the building is stabilized, meaning it's full and operating smoothly, can the developer finally exit, either by selling it or refinancing the loan.
And all this planning, every single line item, is all pointing towards one key number, the stabilized net operating income, or NOI. This is the big one. It's the building's projected annual income once it's full and humming along. You figure it out by taking all the rent money coming in and subtracting all the costs of running the building. For any investor or any bank, the NOI is everything.
Okay, so you have a plan. That's great. But we all know what happens to plans, right? What happens when reality decides to throw a punch? This is where the smart developers use their pro forma to really beat up their own ideas and see if they can survive a few hits.
The first line of defense is building a safety net right into the budget. It's called contingency, and it's basically just extra cash set aside for when things go wrong, because they will. A good developer will have separate contingency funds for construction costs going over, for unexpected soft costs, and even for the risk that it just takes longer than they hoped to find tenants.
So, to figure out if all of this risk is even worth it, developers hone in on a few key metrics. One of the most important is called yield on cost. It's a simple idea. You take that annual income, the NOI we just talked about, and you divide it by the total cost of the project. That number, that return, has to be way better than what you could get just buying a boring, already built office building down the street. That extra return is their reward for taking all that risk.
This is where they really try to break their own models. It's called sensitivity analysis. They start asking, what if?
What if the economy softens and our rents come in 10% lower than we hoped? And as you can see, a small change like that can make a big difference to the final return, maybe even making the deal not worth doing anymore.
And here's another one that is absolutely critical. In development, time is money. I mean, literally. Every single month of delay means you're paying more and more interest on that massive construction loan. Just modeling a 6-month delay in finding tenants, like we see here, can add millions of dollars in costs that eat directly into your profit.
Which brings us to our final point, and it's a big dose of reality. No matter how perfect, how detailed your pro forma is, at the end of the day, it's a guide. It's your best educated guess about the future. It is not a guarantee.
And really, having a solid pro forma and stress testing the heck out of it is what separates the pros from the amateurs. It's what helps you avoid all those classic rookie mistakes, being way too optimistic about rents, not putting enough cash aside in contingency, and totally underestimating how much a few months of delay can cost you.
You know, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? The seasoned developers, the ones who've been through a few cycles, they know things are gonna go sideways. The real point of the pro forma isn't to be a perfect predictor. Its value is in preparing you for an imperfect future. It's about understanding your risks so you can actually manage them.
So in the end, after all the spreadsheets, all the scenarios, and all the stress tests, the entire purpose of the pro forma is to answer one single, incredibly complex question. Does this deal make financial sense, given all of the risks we know are out there? It's the tool that helps turn what looks like a billion-dollar gamble into a calculated, strategic decision.